Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Andy, we get to put a bow on the previews today. I hope your day is going splendidly. We talked about like the most anticipated ones that we were going to do during the whole cycle. This is the one I've been looking forward to the most.
You said you had some spicy takes. I kind of do too after finishing up research today.
Well, I've been keeping a secret about the way I feel about these two teams, saving it for the finale. Like I don't think I've been all the media I've done. I've steered clear of really kind of making my opinion known about the AFC North and how I really think the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens shape up. But I have strong opinions here. I think there are market bettable angles this moment with these two teams that will be fun to dive into. And we're going to start with the Cincinnati Bengals. Where should we go first, I guess? An unexpectedly positive season. I saw that the BetSperts account, or was it the Deep Dive account, retweeted our supercut of just absolute garbage takes about the Bengals from last year. Even the one where we made fun of them taking a kicker who ended up being a Pro Bowl kicker effectively, or an all-pro kicker.
And to quote our friends from Letterkenny, if anyone watches that funny Canadian show, to be fair, we were not the only ones. It was a high uncertainty team. I did bet their season win total under, but I did not lay a cent of juice. I bet them under 3.5 and under 2.5 wins. I said, if Burrow doesn't pop back from this injury properly, which actually, if you look at some of the splits from the first half of the second season, he didn't. He was still very good. The offensive line did not get fixed. We were, a lot of uncertainty around pieces on the defense and the head coach. I said, this could be a really bad team. This is a high volatility team, but I'm almost like hedging what I said, because I said high volatility, but I didn't give a lot of credence to the long tail of upwards. And again, to be fair, they only won 10 games. This was a team that didn't, blaze into the playoffs with 12, 13 wins and a high seed. They had to play 4 playoff games, and they lost to the Bears and the Jets. This was a weird team. This was a goofy season. You don't see things like this happen, all that often. But yeah, they 10-7, won the division for the first time since 15. They, again, like I said, they lost to the Jets and the Bears, but they beat the Bills twice during the season as well as going into Tennessee in the playoffs and winning, which the playoff games, the biggest margin of victory in any of the playoff games they had was in the first one, the Raiders game. All the rest were like 3-point games. That was their first playoff win since 1990. Obviously, they mentioned that plenty during the playoff run, but I'd forgotten about that till now. That is a long ass drought. So kudos to the Queen City for having something to cheer for. But 1990, Drew, I was 5-6 years old. You were markedly older because you're, well into your 40s, but still we were young men at this point. That's a long time ago. They beat the 1 seed, they beat the 2 seed, they got to the Super Bowl and really almost won. And it's funny, the memes from the beginning of the season where you had Jamar and Chase, where Burrow gets tackled trying to throw to Chase because they didn't take Sewell, or they could have taken either top lineman. They were both very good, but it turned out got him in the end. But in the long run, it wasn't one of those, let's say the Bills made the Super Bowl and lost. That would have been disappointing. Same thing with a lot of the teams, the Rams, the Packers, a bunch of teams from the AFC, honestly. But this was a team with a 6.5 win total. They won a bunch of games, several of them on the road in the playoffs. It felt like house money. Like, if you're a Cincy fan, you're feeling still pretty good. even, we're going to throw some cold water on some of the roster problems, but still getting that to happen that early in the Joe Burrow era, it feels pretty good. Like you got Joe Burrow 4 playoff games under his belt. That's helpful.
Yeah.
You can shit talk this offensive line and talk regression all you want. You can't take that kind of experience away from the young man. We talked about how poised he was, and I mean that's just going to help things. So I don't know. Yeah, they were a tough team in the playoffs for a lot of people because the numbers really didn't suss out not betting against them. Like there was a bunch of times like, well, we should probably bet against this team, right? And for Christ's sakes, it was it was what we had. And now the question we have to answer is like, is Joe Burrow, is this the kind of team, the kind of franchise, the kind of ownership management group that builds around this and turns this into hey, we're going to do this a few more times in the next 5 to 10 years? Or is it Dan Marino's career where, hey, you got to a Super Bowl super early and then, hey, you're very good, but this team just isn't good enough for, I don't know, the next 15 years. And you're going to go in the Hall of Fame, but not with a ring, buddy. I mean, those things happen. It's very hard to win a Super Bowl. It's harder to do it in a small market with the spending being what it is, I suppose. And I don't know. I'm excited by this team because some of the, they have holes, but some of the positions they've filled in spades are the most important positions. And I don't know. We'll get to 2022. I mean, your takeaways from a 10-win season that saw them almost win a Super Bowl. Like if that line holds out a little longer, they might have won the game in the end.
Oh yeah. Oh, that was a very winnable game for them. I mean, I was playing with house money at that point, but yeah, I would have been disappointed. The Cincinnati Bengals went 14-6-1 against the spread last year as underdogs. They were 9-2-1. So this was a team that was extremely friendly to their backers. And they came out of the gates hot. Like you were talking about playing their win totals under. They already had 5 wins by week 7.
Yeah, it was not fun for that.
And it was like the first 2 weeks were funny because week 1 was fluky. You shouldn't have beat the Vikings. You got a fortunate call and a long field goal to win that game, but you should have beat Chicago week 2. And then the wins you got against Pittsburgh, Detroit, and then the Pittsburgh and Detroit were solid, but it was still kind of Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, and Detroit were solid, and then it was still kind of maybe this is a team that's just going to beat up on the bad teams this year. And then they went into Baltimore as 6.5-point dogs, and they basically announced their presence. That was a superlative game by them. They had a perfect game plan. They picked on that Baltimore secondary that was missing some pieces. They won 41-17 going away, and that was a statement game.
Yeah, they went full gap band on them. 41 points. It was
incredibly
I remember that
performance.
It was, and that was what was so maddening about this team, because that was super impressive. We saw that, and then you get to the next week, which again, maybe I should just, to be fair, this whole episode, to be fair, 3rd straight road game for a young team, but man, like it's almost, and it's funny, we're in US Open times, and anyone who bets tennis knows that a break of serve is not really a break of serve unless you consolidate it.
Surely.
Like
for sure.
If you do not let the, you got to hold your serve after that, or it doesn't mean shit. You're just back at square one. And that's what the next game felt like. It's like, oh, like this is maybe a team that we need to turn heel on hard, and they're just going to do these sort of things. And they gave up 34 to the Jets. It's not where you want to be. And I'm honestly, the next week as well, they gave up 75 points over the next 2 weeks heading into the bye. And my expectations certainly were retempered at that point. So these teams that have these roller coaster seasons where they have really, outlier results both ways, they are so hard to bet on. They make it so hard.
Yeah, they are. But there's a common theme, and that's that they have young quarterbacks. And really, like a lot of our kind of lack of enthusiasm for these guys last year, they threw us. It was a little bit of a curveball. Joe Burrow tore his ACL in year one. He did not get a full off season of really kind of getting reps and on, kind of growing with the team, which is usually the recipe for a leap in year two. But for whatever reason, Joe Burrow is enough of an alpha, I guess, that he made the leap even without getting the offseason reps. And some of that was due to the way that they rostered this team. I think even up until they, made the Super Bowl, I think people were still like, there's some clear signal if you look at the data. They're not very efficient. They're just they're getting it done with explosive plays, and this is not repeatable. Well, if you put three absolute horses out there at wide receiver with a quarterback who's got the talent and the moxie of Joe Burrow, you've got a dynamic offense in the NFL in the year 2022. And it was amazing to see it play out as into playoff success. You can look at the playoff success and say they were fortunate by the way things broke. Clearly, losing the Week 17 game, or winning the Week 16 game so that they could against Kansas City was again another statement game that obviously put Burrow into the Comeback Player of the Year award catbird seat. Put Jamar Chase, it gifted Jamar Chase the Offensive Rookie of the Year, and it put Cincinnati in general into the driver's seat for the AFC North so that they could rest some of their players Week 17, which helped them avoid having to play Kansas City in the first round of the playoffs. Instead, they got the Raiders. The 4-5 seed winner then went on to Tennessee instead of Kansas City in round 2. So, it was a little bit of their own doing that they got that preferred path. And they were 7-point dogs against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. I expected them to get mowed down, but they did it in a different way than we had seen to that point. And that was that they made amazing adjustments defensively at halftime and just completely stumped the world's greatest offense at home with a double-digit lead. And so at the end of the day, even though there were lucky aspects to what happened for these guys in 2021, I do not qualify that as fluky whatsoever. I think you got clear signal that this team is good. And I think that has to be your starting point for handicapping them in 2022 because they got better. They added pieces. We can kind of critique, I think, some of the decisions they made because you have the golden ticket where you have a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal. You have a young quarterback on a rookie deal who is the guy. And you can, at that point, put all of your chips on the table, put elite pieces around him, and go chase that ring. And for whatever reason, I think probably because Mike Brown is cheap, the Bengals didn't really do that. They're selling record numbers of jerseys. They got a sponsor for the first time for their stadium, right? Like their money is coming in just hand over fist. They can't give it to Mike Brown quickly enough, and yet they just kind of nibbled in free agency. They just kind of, they didn't really, make any splashy moves trading away future assets for bona fide pieces the way the Chargers did, the way the Dolphins did. And so it's kind of like the opportunity was there for them to be more aggressive, I thought. But that doesn't change the fact that this is still an absolute bitchin' roster. And it's going to be a factor when the chips, when you're accounting at the end of the season, this is going to be a team that you have to consider in terms of AFC and what is a crowded and very qualified AFC. So, realistically, like you said, they could have won the Super Bowl. It was there for them.
It was right there. And that I think that's what you get. And maybe in the end, I was right about them being high volatility, but I was going too macro and not micro enough where that's how their games played out. That's how you lose games to the Jets and Bears. Like when things don't work, like you're gonna have bad games. When things work, you're gonna beat the Ravens, who had injured, and we'll get to that, but they weren't that injured yet. Like once we got to like week 10, 12, 14, it's like, oh no, everyone's gone. But it makes me think of like the three true outcomes, in like baseball. It was similar, like, hey, we have deep pass or we have Burrow gets sacked. That's where does that put you as far as if that's your first down play? It puts you in a spot where you have a super low probability of making anything out of that drive, or you might have just scored. So, I mean, they were kind of feast or famine in that sense, where it's like you have the three best wide receivers in the division. Man, I'll put Deontay Johnson probably up there, but you have probably three of the best wide receivers in the division. You have the best 1, 2, 3. You have a quarterback that gets it immediately, and your offensive line can't protect. So it's like if he gets the ball out, we're probably going to move the chains. It was a fun team to watch. And it was, again, a little maddening. And yeah, Joe Burrow he is a guy that gets it. I said that a lot last year. I said that even during his rookie year, the poise of a person who looked like he'd been in the league for a few years already, just didn't have any of that skitterish, that stuff that rookies have, didn't have the happy feet. And yeah, maybe should we just do all hot takes today, because this will be a hot take. Hot take is like within the next few years, there'll be a time where Joe Burrow is the best quarterback in the league. Like we'll say, hey, he's the best quarterback in the league, and we're going to come into a season and he's going to be the favorite to win MVP. Like that is super probable in my mind. Like the only thing that keeps that from happening is Herbert just keeps getting better and better, and it's just 1A, 1A between those two, which honestly that seems probable as well. So we're in good shape, because I remember a certain co-host not too long ago was a little worried about a quarterback drought. Apparently you should have been worried. You should have been worried about a different kind of drought. Jesus, you guys need some water up there. But quarterback drought has, there's been some bad drafts over the last few years with that.
Yes.
And if Trevor Lawrence comes around and we get anything out of some of the, like Fields and Lance, I think we're in good hands for it's like Jurassic Park, man. Life finds a way. We're always going to have a few top quarterbacks, and that's fun. So kind of final thoughts on 2021 were, it was weird, but the way that roster was constructed, maybe not too surprising.
It shouldn't have been like, they spent decently in free agency 2 years in a row leading into last year. Right?
Yeah, they picked up some nice pieces.
They picked up nice pieces. And so we shouldn't give that short shrift, but they did invest in non-premium positions. And they didn't invest in the offensive line until this most recent offseason. And what's crazy is that, like, how do you know Burrow is going to be good? How do you know he's going to be a guy that we are talking about as a MVP frontrunner, best quarterback in the league in a couple of years? He shortcut the development process more than any other player I can think of. And it has been
like he woke up one year and he was like a year 4 guy. He got a year 4 guy and a year 3 contract.
That's right. His final, his Heisman season at LSU. I mean, what else could he have proven that he besides he was that guy? He comes into the league week 2 behind an absolute ramshackle joke of a unit. He threw 60 passes in a Thursday night primetime game. Yeah. Like, typically, if you are a young quarterback and you don't have the reps, you don't have the experience, your telltale signs are the game is moving too quickly for you. You're having difficulty making decisions. You're having difficulty pulling the trigger on throws because you're unsure of yourself. You don't want to make the mistake, and you're not 100%. You don't know what the moving parts are around you. None of that ever fazed him. Never. Right. The only dings we had of him as a rookie were he was too small. He needed to get an NFL body. Like, he was a little too small.
I think we compared him to Kevin Garnett. We're like, if he fills out like Garnett, we have a Garnett career. Remember how little KG was in like 95?
Of course. And he was never afraid to push the ball down the field, never afraid to make the killer mistake, never afraid to never unsure of his abilities. And his abilities are bona fide. His ball is beautiful. And I think the fact that he showed you what he did last year and kind of made that leap to elite status in a year again where he did not have an offseason because he was recovering from an ACL surgery, that should be that much more of a signal that this guy is special. And now he goes into year 3 with a full season of preparation. And yeah, granted, he had some injuries down. And actually, we didn't even mention that when we were reflecting on 2020.
Yeah, he had the pinky that got dislocated. He messed up his other knee. Not nearly as bad, but he had like a messed up knee. An injury not seen since Nancy Reagan was in the White House. The throat contusion. That was something. Like, he had to go to the hospital because he got banged in the throat so hard. They had to put him on voice rest. Remember that?
Of course.
I remember that was like a worry. Like, can he call audibles if he's not allowed to talk?
Yeah.
He was a gamer. He was tough. And I think the biggest takeaway for me, as far as why I think it's just going to keep getting better, is what we saw from the first half to the second half of the season, where he was able to cut down a bunch on the picks. He was if you look at it as a whole, it's like, hey, that's a pretty damn good year. But if you really take a look at that second half of the season, he knocked out the interceptions quite a bit. He made better, even better decisions that he was already making. And I mean, he was a better quarterback in the last 8 games and obviously into the playoffs. And everything our main worries were Joe Burrow's coming off an injury. Check. That's fine. He was all right. Zach Taylor's an idiot. I mean, it's easy to overcome when you have that many skill position players.
Maybe we won't cover this
now.
We
might need to revisit
I think his coordinators are really good. I did a lot of.
I'm with you there.
I did a lot of like really kind of careful looking at that, and I think Zach Taylor did a good job last year of just kind of staying out of the way. But he made some aggressive decisions on 4th downs, so he's kind of giving you,
which is funny because he's a McVay guy.
Yeah, it is funny because that's true.
But then our other thing that we really teased on is like they wasted an entire draft pick on a kicker. That guy had like 14 field goals in the postseason. That was like it's tied Vinatieri for the record, and he won several games for them. I mean, you talk about all the nice things we say about Joe and the poise where the big moments didn't get to him. How about Evan McPherson just stepping up to the plate and taking the mantle from you can't take the mantle from a guy who just signed a big contract, but man, what is about the AFC North and big time kickers?
Big time kickers.
McPherson, you never know how that career goes. But man, he stepped up when he needed to, and
clutch.
Yes.
Real quick, you brought it up. Burrow was a better quarterback in the second half of the year than the first.
Mm-hmm.
He is technically, he hasn't even given us 2 years of quarterback yet. Like, he's still very, very young in the progression because he missed part of his first year with the ACL.
Yeah, we're at like 20 games. Yeah, man, you got playoffs in there.
Playoffs. Yeah. The Bengals covered their last 8 games of the season. Like, this team closed hot. And that is usually a bellwether of a team that is like just an easy bet on the next year. An easy bet on. And yet there's a coolness around the perception of this team. Doubts linger. And I think that actually opens up an opportunity to bet on the Bengals. I think this is a bet. I think this is a pretty clear, obvious bet on team. Market is a little behind for reasons that we can kind of dive into maybe later in the pod talking about the Ravens. But I'll throw
some cold water on him eventually because there are some issues
for sure.
But the Super Bowl hangover, while hard to quantify why, when, who, where, but it is a thing. This is a team that had a semi-easy-ish schedule. Again, if you don't want to listen to us for an hour or you just don't have the time, which you should find the time first off, you jerk. But one of our earlier guests this year, Cleve TA, go read his preview because I'm not writing anything down. He had his stuff is so brief. And he really, really, really did kind of nail it. This is the quickest cold water. This is directly quoted from his stuff. As great as Burrow was last year, the Bengals did face the second easiest schedule of opposing pass defenses. They will flip, and they'd be facing the single toughest set of opposing pass defenses based on last year's DVOA, which is tough. But at the same time, they played Baltimore twice, and Baltimore's numbers from last year have to be lower than what they actually should be. So that probably tempers any sort of variance in there. And then again, from his, they also received the benefits of placing backup quarterbacks in Mike White, who they lost to, Josh Johnson, Drew Lock, Andy Dalton, and Trevor Lawrence, plus 2 games against the skeleton corpse of Big Ben Roethlisberger. Sure. And again, that 6 games against quarterbacks that rated 33rd or worse in EPA per dropback. So they did get a lot of benefits. The schedule is, and they won 10 games, but they won the division. This is a first place schedule. Like we said, it's getting much, much tougher from a pass defense kind of who you're facing for opposing pass defense is projected. Anything can happen. Anything can change. To counteract that, they did bring in 3 pieces on the offensive line. They drafted some more pieces. They drafted some defense. And they retained, I don't know. Who do you think they lost that was super problematic? I'm trying to look at that. The Trey Waynes thing doesn't bother me. Uzuma and Riley Reef are probably the ones that maybe are important, but you brought in 2 offensive linemen that are, if nothing else, experienced. I know Karras didn't play center most recently, but he has in the past. And Lyle Collins, essentially they brought in nobody but people who will line up on the line of scrimmage. They got Hayden Hurst as well. So a bunch of linemen that, we played with fire last year. We didn't get burnt too bad. Now we should they went the opposite of the Bears, where the Bears just, we don't need wide receivers and offensive linemen for years in a row. The Bengals are like, well, we should get somebody, right? So they didn't go out and make a huge splash, but got multiple pieces for the offensive line, which was, the glaring weakness. Maybe that helps a little with the Super Bowl hangover. Or I know you're duckies and bunnies, roses and, ice cream, but it's still the schedule bothers me a little. And then also what we see.
Oh no!
What we see.
Put your pin on the Put your pin on your thoughts on the schedule
there's some stretches there that are, God, especially if Dallas sucks. Like, you don't want to bet on this team now.
Their schedule. We'll get to the schedule in a second. But
the other piece being defensive coordinators now have, that wasn't the offense we saw last year was not the offense we saw the year before. Not even close. Teams adjust. Teams know how to stop this team now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can say they know how to stop this team. That doesn't mean they execute it. Doesn't mean they have the skill position players, the scheme, or the in-game adjustments to actually do it. But everybody knows, if you give somebody enough time with a chessboard, they're going to tell you what the best move is.
Yeah.
And these teams had all offseason to scheme against this. Again, it was a middling team when it comes to record. They had a nice run in the playoffs, but I do worry a little bit about that. Plus some of the high-end teams they will play during the schedule.
Okay. The thing about the Super Bowl hangover is I am having trouble seeing it applying to these guys here, because there are sort of like the Super Bowl hangover narrative that people like to point to. There are truths in the narrative part of it that kind of direct, that make it more than just bullshit narrative, right?
Yeah.
You get a tougher schedule because presumably you're a first place schedule. Right?
You had enough success. Yeah. You're not a fourth place.
Presumably,
schedule.
Right. Presumably guys got to get paid and you lose a couple of key pieces. Presumably, like you were a team that was kind of building that to that point, and now you kind of, there are clear player regressions, right? Not everybody can play as well as they did in your Super Bowl run, right? Like all of those things are generally true of the teams that lose the Super Bowl. But I will tell you sincerely, and I honestly try to think hard about a Super Bowl loser or winner who was as unexpectedly there as the Bengals were last year. You have to go back a long time to find a team that made a leap that was as big as the Bengals did last year, from expected to finish fourth in division, 6.5 wins, to, oh, by the way, we made the Super Bowl. There are very, 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 very few examples of this. You want to guess the most recent one?
Was that Cardinals team not supposed to be good? Or the Giants?
Ooh, Cardinals is probably a pretty good guess.
That Cardinals team was kind of out of nowhere. And I don't think people thought we'd see the resurgence there from
They went
the old
9-7
grocery
and
bagger,
1.
but
The Cardinals team is probably a pretty good guess.
the Carolina team, that team had a huge resurgence in record, but the team the year before was just super unlucky.
Cardinals were 50-1 preseason, over under 7.5. So that's pretty close. I was going back to the 2001 Patriots, which was their win total was 6.5. They were 60-1 to win the Super Bowl that year. And you can say, yeah, they had a hangover the next season, but like that was the start of a dynasty because of where those players were on their arcs. Not not an obvious like, oh, well, that was a one-time thing. There's regression coming. Like this is all going to come falling apart. I think you can probably point to the Seahawks a little bit for the win that they had over the Niners. I believe they had been a playoff team the year before, and their win total, oh no, they were 10.5, so that doesn't count at all. But no, there's most of the teams that are thought of as Super Bowl hangover teams are teams that were kind of reaching the peak of their powers, didn't quite get it done, and then the next year expectations were a little too high, and so they're perceived as having underachieved because of the expectations were too high. And I don't really think that that's what we're looking at all with the Bengals in the market right now. They are clearly lined like a team that is on a second tier in the AFC, maybe third tier even, not the favorites to win their division. Like honestly, if they repeat success and go back to the Super Bowl, people will be like, God, can you believe these guys did it again? It's crazy that that's where we're at with these guys, considering the fact that all of their key pieces are on the upward part of their arc, including,
it's
coaches,
not like they have a bunch of
coordinators,
old
everything
players.
stayed together. Yeah. You know what else usually happens
all
with
their
Super
good
Bowl
players are old.
teams that usually happens to Super Bowl teams lose? Couple assistants get picked off your staff. A couple of guys retire because that was like the end. They were just hanging in, see if they could make one run. None of that happened with the Bengals. Like this team is coming back.
Brian Callahan wasn't getting wasn't getting the Jacksonville job.
Did he get any for Jacksonville?
I don't know that he got any. Like,
okay,
I'd never keep up with that. Most of it's just bullshit and posturing for the most part. They know who they want to hire. Yeah. So I think, and again, I think I understand why the market is cold though. I mean, it's between the obvious and expected resurgence of the Ravens squad, which probably has just as good of a roster, if not better, than anyone in the division.
Ooh, let's put a pin in that too.
If they're bizarro Bengals. Like if the Bengals have the best receivers, they have none of that.
They have nothing to throw to except for Mark Andrews.
They have Mark Andrews and Devin Duvernay, but yeah, it's the Bengals, or excuse me, the Ravens are expected to be good. The AFC is expected to be tough. This is still a coach that people don't trust and a young quarterback who had what people maybe perceive as a fluky season. We don't know that the offensive line is going to be improved. And you have a quarterback that's had 2 knee injuries already in 2 years.
Sure.
One of them was bad. He was sacked 70 times if you count the 4 playoff games. 70 is a lot. That is not Derek Carr, David Carr numbers. That's not great. Additionally, and how they count this as a stat is if you throw the ball and then you end up on your ass or your back, it's a knockdown. The ball has to be out for it to be a knockdown. A knockdown is not overlapped with a sack. Additionally, 49 knockdowns Guy got rocked a lot. Like,
He's-
honestly, making it through the season with only a few little injuries seems like he was lucky. So if this offensive line doesn't get better, then yeah, regression may be coming, because then you have a bunch of defensive coordinators who are gunning all season, especially the ones in division, gunning to stop you. Especially, there's some experienced defensive coordinators.
Easier said than done.
Easier said than done, yes. But you have a much tougher schedule of defensive pass coverage. You have overall a first place schedule. And yes, there's some nice stretches in there where I think you can make some hay. But honestly, like, I have this team as a low end playoff team. I think they win about as many games as they do last year. Like,
Okay.
there's enough toughness to the schedule where it's like, yeah, probably 10, 11 wins. Like, I if I had to bet a season win total, I'd bet the over, because offense outduels defense every damn day. But there's enough uncertainty around this team that I'm not, champing at the bit to be betting on them with some of the roster holes.
Let me push back on a couple of the points you made, because I agree generally, but to me at least, Burrow taking all of those hits and still, kind of making it through a Super Bowl run is 21 games. That's evidence that he did do enough, just growth, developing his body to where he can now make it through an NFL season without being flagged as like a sincere injury risk. But the risk is there. The risk is there.
You get hit that many times.
Yeah.
And if that happens, if it repeats, it's not going to. The odds of you being that lucky again don't seem that likely.
Sure. But the offensive line lacks continuity. But from a talent standpoint, you cannot hold this group up to last year's group and say that they are in the same class at all. This looks like, from a talent standpoint, a clear middle class, if not above middle class, if they find cohesion. And that should make. I mean, what is the ceiling?
Where do you rank Karras?
What is? Let me see. So Karras I have above replacement level.
But as a guard,
yeah,
and play center for a couple years.
That's true.
So that's a bit of a miss. Center's important, as much as we love to talk about left tackles. Like, center's a very important position. That's your quarterback of your line. Like, you won't have continuity or cohesion immediately because you're bringing in enough new pieces. So I think my thesis on the offensive line for this team, and one of their biggest roster holes, is if this offensive line is good, and like you said, I can envision the ceiling you're picturing, middle of the pack. I don't picture it till after the bye. Could you see something like that where, hey, these new pieces are better, but they just lack the continuity and cohesion to be better immediately, where it's not the absolute god-awful dumpster fire horse shit we saw last year. It's a little better. It just keeps getting better, and then by the getting closer to the bye, it's like, you know what? This is a serviceable offensive line that isn't going to get this young star killed.
I think that is.
He's only going to get sacked like 40 times.
I think that is a super reasonable expectation.
Yeah.
And wait until we get to the schedule, and we'll bring that back up. Okay. So in general, by
the way,
Mike
Fuchs covered in.
Did he cover?
Despite getting bageled in the fourth set, he did cover.
Good work, bro. Good
4.5.
Good job by Fuchs. So in general, they upgraded this squad. They nibbled. They didn't put all their chips on the table, even though they're going to have more money than God going forward. And I blame Mike Brown. He is literally looking at how much he's going to have to pay these guys and is like, better start building the war chest now. And I'm sure that's kind of part of it. And it's a shame on him, because God knows how many he'll be around for, how many runs he'll be around for, and they are built to win now. But all that said, it is a very clear opportunity for them. They're still upgraded, even though it wasn't like they didn't go get Teron Armstead. They didn't trade for an elite cornerback, right? So be it. La'el Collins is fine. The roster holes, though, are for real. And the most obvious one, I think, is left cornerback. Eli Apple is a problem, but I think between Jesse Bates and Von Bell, who are outstanding safety duo, and the Dax Hill acquisition in the draft, who looks to be able to step in and provide some kind of bounce from your secondary, I think you can cover and give shade help with Eli Apple a bit. Mike Hilton, fine nickelback. Awuzie, fine right cornerback. But the secondary, particularly the cornerbacks, do look vulnerable. Good thing though.
Yeah,
you
Eli
want to know
Apple
what's
is
good?
just a walking penalty flag, and then I guess we hope Jesse Bates is happy.
Yeah. Oh no, I think. And again, like speaking of Mike Brown cheap, like pay that guy.
Well, yeah, that's
what are you
the thing.
fucking
Like,
doing? Why?
yeah,
Why are you?
you hope
thinking around
you hope
with
he's
this?
not disgruntled, because
Yeah.
he's a big part of what you need on that defensive side of the ball to be
Yeah.
working
So
out this year.
let's kind of look at the secondary a little bit more. It is a hole. You agree? That's their biggest hole.
Yeah,
their only
obviously
hole?
Hendrickson's great up front. You got nice
Sam
pieces
Hubbard
there.
also excellent.
Yes, Hubbard. Through the middle, it's fine. Like your front seven is above average, not great, above average. Secondary is your weakness there for sure. And yeah, Eli Apple is, I don't know, like boom or bust, with a heavy lean towards bust, because he's going to give up some big penalty yardage. I don't know if you heard, but defensive pass interference penalties are super penal. Oftentimes,
They
so
are.
He's a bit of an issue. So
you know what's good though? The Ravens don't have any wide receivers, and the Browns only have Amari Cooper, and the Steelers don't have a quarterback who can throw to the left side of the field. So. Good news for you, Eli Apple, is that in division you are not going to get tested much. Now against the Bills and the Chiefs, now that opens up an opportunity for an absolute score fest. Those games are going to be sick. But fundamentally, like this, I don't think your key weaknesses, your roster holes, match up in a way that dooms you in division. You agree with that?
No, and that's where I have this team is like, hey, this team wins 11 games. And then if people are better prepared for this kind of offense, and you're facing, I mean, you named the kind of teams that they may face in the first round of the playoffs. If Baltimore ends up a game better than them, or even if they do win this division, like, Eli Apple's a big problem if you need to try to advance past.
Yeah, if you got to go on the road to Arrowhead or to Buffalo,
not that they didn't do it last year, and they, the Titans are a different kind of beast, but it's very difficult. So it's like I said, I have this team as a good playoff team who.
Yeah, I also think
Anarumo
as a defensive coordinator this is probably his last year in Cincy, and not because he's getting fired, but because somebody's going to come and take him from you. I think that guy that guy showed you a couple of key things last year. Because guess what? What is, think of one type of game state that you just never really saw with the Bengals. A blown lead. This team did not blow leads, but you know what they did? They came back. They came back a couple of times
from down 14 against the Chiefs, like 6 different times.
From some tough spots. They came back. And so I think that points to a defensive coordinator who was able to in-game evaluate what the opponent's offensive game plan was and make good adjustments with the pieces he had last year. And I think that's something I believe valuable.
I read that. I think I read that in Football Outsiders. They talked about Anarumo a bit and basically said I'm going to say this in a negative way, but I don't mean it this way, lacked an identity as a defense and a defensive coordinator, but they kind of posed it as a positive
in a good way.
Where they posed it's like,
to his benefit, right?
Yeah, it's like, hey, you talk about this team blitzes so much, or this team always plays this, one-on-one with their lockdown corners. Like you never really quite knew what you were going to get, and it might have been a shitty-ish roster in some spots. And obviously, it's Trey Hendrickson. That was great to get that out of him. And maybe part of that was the ever-changing scheme. But what do we talk about with play action passing and safeties that are ambiguous to what part of the field they're going to be in every single play? Being surprising, being unpredictable is the key to winning in the NFL, because if you're predictable, it's just a matter of, it's checkers, not chess at that point. You can just jump their kings and do whatever you want, and such is life. But yeah, when you're dealt a hand like that, and it's kind of the opposite of what we talked about with Seattle. Like Seattle had huge problems with the defense, and he just, it was like a guy trying to hold up a flood, like the little boy sticking his finger in the dike, except there's holes popping out everywhere, and Seattle just couldn't do anything. This was a very, I don't know, admirable job with, a middle of the pack to below average defensive roster.
Yeah. Mike White dink and dunked on him, but by the time you got to the end of the season, though, a lot of those,
or the next week,
a lot of the holes were patched. Yeah, the next week was bad too. Yeah, Baker Mayfield dink and dunk on him. I don't remember how Baker Mayfield beat them. But yeah, this is, I think fundamentally, the coaching, the coordinating, and in general makes up for the roster holes. The roster holes being on defense. Your off-ball linebackers aren't like all pro. So what?
Like, that's 22. It's not 1998.
Yeah. So I think fundamentally, special teams look solid. Offense is rostered like an absolute thoroughbred here. Good Lord. Chase, Higgins, Boyd. I guess depth after those three is a little bit of a question. The wide receiver 4 and 5, Stanley Morgan and Trent Taylor, are huge unknown quantities, but Hayden Hurst
when you
is
trade
a solid.
Chase for like depth, though, I'd rather have 1, 2, 3 like that and just worry about it later.
I would 100% rather have that. Yeah. And
because
presumably you lose one of those three guys, you still, because Hayden Hurst, you're not counting on him being a blocking, you're not counting on needing him in the blocking game as much as you have in the past with your tight ends. And they can go a lot. This team can go 22 and get decent run blocking out of some of their depth at tight end. They've rostered 4 tight ends for some reason. I don't 100% know why. The overall, though, the offense looks like an absolute Ferrari to me. And I think that, it stands above the offensive depth that you have in division, which matters to me.
All right. Sell me this pen with the schedule then.
Okay, let's take a look.
I mean, I can kind of see the spots you're going to pick on already, but there's some spots, and we talked about Cleveland. And I mean, if the Jacoby Brissett experience doesn't work out, what a stretch going into your bye.
Yeah, even coming out of your bye at Pittsburgh, the first 10 games of your season, that looks like 7 or 8 wins to me. So here's the thing. There is still hidden edge in this when you have a team that is coming off of a really, really solid end to their previous season, and then they start their season as weak as this is in terms of, just strength of opponent and situational stuff. You are a bet on, and you look down the home stretch here, and it looks like absolute hell. You're going to have to go against Tennessee, KC, Cleveland, Tampa, New England, Buffalo, Baltimore to finish out your schedule. But when you have a lopsided schedule like this, where your first 10 games are set up for you to go 7-3, 8-2, and your late games are your tough ones, that is a bet on variance, because who the hell knows?
Yeah,
what is going to happen?
I'm not going to wish. Yeah, I'm not wishing ill on anybody. But
there are 3 obvious reasons, Andy. You ready for the 3? The first one is
Tom Brady and Josh Allen may not play those games. I mean,
that's right.
Quarterbacks get injured all the damn time. Those teams are. Do you think they're 3-point underdogs at Tampa if Tom Brady's not at the home? Like, big things happen, and they, the closer the games are to the end of the season, the bigger the variance is going to be.
Yeah. So here are the main 3 reasons why this is a bet on now with this schedule. The first is
lopsidedness.
If it's lopsided, then the first reason is these are all obvious, but I had to say it out loud anyway. If they do well early in the season, their price will get shorter. Period. Like, the market is soft on these guys right now. They are not lined like they are in the same stratosphere as Kansas City, Buffalo, and the Chargers, even, right? The Chargers, who have yet to even play a playoff game as a unit, they're aligned as not as good, right? And so if they go out and they're, say, 7-1, 6-2, 7-2, 8-2, then you are set up for the market shortening on them. The second obvious reason is when you're lopsided, we don't know if the teams at the bottom who you are currently pick'ems against or dogs against, if they will be good at that point in the season because of injuries. And even if they are good, then you have plenty of opportunities to capture equity between now and then. And I look at the point you made about the offensive line potentially gelling as you're coming out of your bye. What better time? You're going at Pittsburgh and facing
TJ
TJ Watt
Watt
and
coming at
company.
your ass.
You're going at Tennessee
Dunlop.
and facing Jeffrey Simmons and company. You're going head to head with KC and Myles Garrett, and then the absolute horses that Tampa has on defense. Belichick's scheme, Von Miller in Buffalo. Like that is when you want your offensive line to be clicking the most, and I think this is set up well for exactly that. So it's I'm just not I'm not sure where the bear case is for these guys. I don't see it. And I think a lot of these games are going to be very different by the time we get there.
It's the combination of those pass rushes you named, and then some of the secondaries that go with it. Like
how many teams?
We'll see. You know, it's still, and somebody pointed this in the chat. Variance cuts both ways, but if it cuts against you, it doesn't matter what the other teams do. Like if you're saying like Joe Burrow and a receiver get hurt, then nothing else matters. It doesn't matter what the other teams do. You're dead.
Okay, so
and then a quick point too to like betting market entry. The first thing I looked at when I looked at this, I said, well, if I'm betting Cincy, I'm betting them now. I have to. They have a soft start. But I said, if I'm betting Baltimore, am I maybe betting them late? Because Cincy has this tough schedule. And then, so it's like the galaxy brain, and you get to the last one, it's like, do I take a Baltimore to win the division price? Or am I just basically betting them in the last game? It's the same fucking thing. So and that somebody just pointed that in the chat too. That could be for all the marbles, which would be just so fun if we can get that one.
So looking at the schedule, Andy, let's go down from the top and you tell me when we get to a team that has a top 10 quarterback and more than one bona fide wide receiver. Pittsburgh?
Week 2.
Dallas? They have more than one bona fide wide receiver? Who else is
later in the season? Don't worry, Drew.
Dallas week 2? Oh, later in the season. Yeah, Gallup's not taking the field week 2. No. I think you blanket CeeDee Lamb there and you make them beat you with anyone else.
I think you're really underselling camp superstar Mr. Tolbert. I don't think he's bad. I think that's going to be a problem with it. It wouldn't be so bad if it was those two on Pittsburgh, but Tolbert with a good quarterback, and the offensive line is having some issues down in Dallas. That's not an easy game.
Not an easy game. I'm not saying that they should be going off.
No, but that's a very good quarterback who has two great running backs. One used to be a great running back. One is really, I think, is great. And they're going to use those guys in the passing game quite a bit. That Dallas offense isn't going to be as shitty as we think. And it's at Dallas. So that's a toughie. And then you go a while.
Yeah. Jets, Miami, maybe to Baltimore, New Orleans. That New Orleans one, you got Thomas and Olave potentially to deal with, and Winston.
Yeah, if
but
Jameis
is Winston
is good,
a top 10 quarterback?
It's a tough one. His ceiling is, and it's in New Orleans, which is a tough place to play. I'm not sure how familiar Burrow is with the Louisiana area, but that's not easy to go to.
Yeah. Atlanta, no.
Nope.
They don't have
Cleveland. Cleveland doesn't have
Carolina. No, Carolina. No.
Mayfield
does have your number a little bit, so who the hell knows?
And Baker has played at a high enough level, and they have
a couple.
Honestly, out of all the receiving corps we just listed, Carolina's is. I mean, Dallas's is the best when it's healthy, but all the receiving corps we went through, Miami and Carolina are scary.
You know what Carolina is though? That's
Miami has the receivers. It just
the
doesn't.
Carolina
have
is you take the 8.5 points. I'm not worried about them.
Oh
losing
yeah,
that
I'm
game.
thinking about
That's
that now.
you just take the points.
That's
And then Pittsburgh
that's
again in week 11.
sneaky,
So basically,
sneaky, sleepy
we're
spot
at
going into
like Baltimore is a coin flip just because Lamar Jackson, I guess, but boy, oh boy, did you match up well against Baltimore both times you played them last year. But we'll leave that Baltimore one a coin flip week 5. New Orleans, tough. Dallas, tough. Carolina, maybe you don't cover. But otherwise, this looks like 8-2 to me as your median outcome through 10 weeks. And at that point, again, like maybe only the Chargers are ahead of you in terms of win-loss at that point. Maybe Buffalo, maybe KC. But if either Buffalo or KC stumbles early, doesn't really have any intensity of trying to go wire to wire, then potentially you could be in the clear for the AFC 1 seed at that point. At which point the market is just is bowing down. Tennessee, KC, Cleveland,
who's in
Tampa,
the spot for the
Buffalo,
AFC
Baltimore.
1 seed come week 11, week 12 last year?
I think it was Baltimore.
The 8-3 Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, attrition just caught up, and they had a tough schedule too. But
it went pear-shaped there, and after that,
yeah, it went a little pear-shaped. But yeah, tough landing. But if you can make hay when the sun's shining early in the season, and you just weather that storm that is the last 7 weeks,
yeah,
you win enough games to be playing in the playoffs again, and that just even if it's not your year to go back to the Super Bowl because the AFC is so tough and probably playing a road game or two again. Hard to do it again. It's just more experience for this young team in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And you just keep filling up these holes. And this team is in such a good spot from a roster construction and contract standpoint that if they spend a little, we're looking good. So we're building to this. Did you bet something already?
Yes. Let's look at the odds.
All right. Pull the odds up.
To win the Super Bowl is 22-1. To win the AFC is 12-1. To win the AFC North plus 170. Make the playoffs, yes, is minus 134. Their win total over under 9.5. I like 2 bets. I like an all over win total, and I like to win the AFC North.
10.5, or what'd you do?
10.5.
Okay,
is a bet.
Don't hate it.
Win the AFC
plus 150-ish.
Plus ones, I think I got 165 or something like that.
Nice. That's decent.
I bet to win the AFC North at a better number than plus 170. You can still get plus 170 out there, but that is currently, as we stand here today, that is my biggest edge on a division win price across the entire NFL.
I went Chase Diggs in the fantasy league we were drafting currently.
Ah, Christ, you asshole.
I was on auto draft, buddy. I didn't know exactly.
I have Burrow.
All right.
So that's good.
I mean, we'll just touch on this real quick because we've already gone a little long on the Bengals. But the betting plan of attack is if you're betting the Bengals, bet them now. Somebody in the chat brought this up too. If you are facing a defense that blitzes, if you're betting, follow your defensive coordinators, your defensive tendencies. If you're facing a team that relies on the blitz to get pressure, those wide receivers are going to be out on islands, and nobody has 3 number one. Well, we did go over one team that probably has 4 number 1 corners, but they're not in the AFC West this year. So
they don't play
they don't play them. I will say, there's going to be receivers out on islands against people who can't guard them if you have to blitz to bring pressure, and he will again torch the blitz. Sam Lipscomb saying it. So it's and Dan on point. If the Bengals go 4-13 this year, do we skip previewing them next year? Probably. We just do 31 next year.
Well, I mean, that's because if that happens, that's because Burrow.
That's probably an injury.
Nuked.
So betting plan of attack early, often, and I will be betting them against teams who I think are very liable to be burnt by this offense.
Yep. That said, I'm holding off week 1. I think they win week 1 against the Steelers, but I'm not loving the idea of laying those points.
I don't like laying it early in a divisional game. Yuck.
No. But I also would not fall into the Steelers, fall in love with the Steelers in that spot either. That looks
Oh,
like
I think
that
that
looks like
number's
a
fair.
perfect number. Yeah, six is fair for me.
All right, let's truly put a bow on these
Okay.
with the final 32 of 32. I think that's how many players this team had in the IR at the end of the year. We'll do
32 out of
the
32.
Ravens. We'll do Ravens right now. 3, 2, 1, countdown.
Welcome to the deep dive. Bow time. Baltimore Ravens. This is an interesting one because it's taken me a long time to kind of get here in terms of my personal opinion. And there were a lot of times this season where markets went up for the Ravens. Prices looked bettable. The narrative, you knew the money was coming. You knew that this team was going to get bet because of the injury narrative, because of the, particularly because of the Lamar Jackson injury, specifically because of how solid they were record-wise when the injuries really bit them last year, and then just in general because people have been expecting that it's time for Baltimore to make a little bit of a run.
Can I go? Let's jump right to betting plan of attack.
Sure.
My betting plan of attack was to, even at a worse number, because I missed the best of it, because I don't want to bet on this team maybe in the current state. I said, once they trade for a wide receiver, I'll probably just put some money on them.
You traded a wide receiver away.
Surely. Well, no, I mean, even during this preseason, I'm like,
Yeah.
surely
Somebody's
this
gonna
isn't
make
the
a
wide
move,
receiver room. We're going to go into the. So, hot take number 2, quarterback wise, I'm throwing my Drew Dinsick tinfoil hat on. I'm jumping all over the board here. Like, this is the stupidest thing I'm going to say on any of these, and that actually is quite the achievement. in my mind, it's like, if I didn't know better, they are out on Lamar in this front office, because it is, again, we've had a turnover from Hall of Famer and absolute, wonderful GM, run to DaCosta, and it's some of the cut from the same cloth, same tree, whatnot. But like, is he out on Lamar? Is he just going to say we're not getting him any help at receiver? And you didn't have to take that trade, but man, they got a good price for Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown is not worth what they got him for, what they got in that trade. Like, if somebody offers you that, you take it, but then you take it and flip it and end up with, somebody else on your team to help out at wide receiver. And that's where, they had 11 draft picks. They ended up using all of them. And anyone who knows how that went knows how many wide receivers they took, because it was none. And again, I just don't understand. It feels very Bears-esque, whereas Justin Fields hasn't done shit for anybody yet. He's had 2 like flash plays that were great. That run for the touchdown was amazing. That's his highlight. We're talking about a person who's won the league MVP, who is wildly, out in his own little, place here, is this crazy talent as a quarterback who can run. He's better than Mike Vick at this point.
Yeah, most dynamic athlete in the NFL.
He's it's wild, and they're just treating him like, and then somebody brings that up, and then he's his own agent. So it's a mess. I feel like, are you just purposely doing this? Why would this be your plan? So we'll come back to that.
Let's continue down this path. Baltimore Ravens
let's not even talk about 2021. Everyone got hurt. I want to talk. 15 seconds. I want to. The corners got hurt. All the running backs. Everybody. Lamar Jackson missed.
I do want to talk about 2021 in a little more detail, but let's go even bigger picture and look at like the Harbaugh era. The Ravens have been a perennial success. They're competing for a divisional championship, competing for a playoff berth is expected in Baltimore.
They haven't had a losing season in quite a while. And they went to overtime. They almost had a winning season.
But like and there's been turnover at the top in terms of general manager. But the philosophical bones of the Ravens seem to be permanently effed by the Joe Flacco experience. They were a team that was, we are going to invest draft capital and dollars on the defense. Flacco takes them on a fluky Super Bowl run. They give Flacco the bag. That hampered them then for 4 years where, they could not build a team around Flacco because he didn't deserve the price tag they gave him. And then once they were rid of Flacco, like the entire Lamar Jackson era has been, we're going to dedicate 60 to 80% of our dollars to the defensive side of the ball, which is way lopsided and feels completely out of touch with where we are in the modern NFL, right? Like
I thought about that a little.
Anyone on the offense,
because Flacco had, and I'll stick to this.
Sure.
The way Evan McPherson had the greatest postseason I've ever seen from a kicker, Flacco had the greatest postseason I've ever seen from a quarterback. If you take the sum of all the games he played, especially if you start to put it to their baseline of like, this is what this guy is, and this is what he did for this stretch of 3 or 4 games. Like Flacco was perfect. It was, again, that was another one where it's like, how is this happening?
The two Eli Manning Super Bowl runs are in the conversation. The Nick Foles Super Bowl run is in the conversation as well.
Yeah, but Eli was a better quarterback than Joe Flacco.
I agree.
I'm saying, yeah, those teams maybe weren't as good, but what Joe Flacco did was so unsustainable. And then, they paid him anyway. I thought maybe that would paint this, but man, you can't say how we paid this, pocket passer from Delaware a decade ago, and that's why we shouldn't pay the greatest athlete in the league.
It's a weird why? Like, forget about paying. Whether you forget about getting the contract for Lamar done before the season, one way or the other. Like, just all of the pieces on offense. Where is any of the money being spent?
Yeah.
That's the weird thing. It's so much of the the dedication of capital has gone to the defensive side of the ball that that's obviously their vision. It was like, we're going to spend on defense, get known quantities, go get free agents, have bona fide guys that we know are good, particularly because the defense is absolutely loaded, and these are vets that command big time dollars in Justin Houston and Calais Campbell and Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters and Marcus Williams now. Like they are spending on the defense and they are not on the offense. And I don't even know if I don't know that it says much about how they feel about Flacco as much as it is just weirdly their vision, but I don't agree with it. I think it's absolutely stupid to operate this way in 2022. And I think that the point you made about not trading for a wide receiver is ultimately lowers the ceiling for this group, this team tremendously. And, it's like, so going back to like knowing that the market was going to, I say knowing, like it was a very fair assumption.
Feeling very good about the market.
Fair assumption that the market was going to play over Ravens win total. The market was going to play Ravens to win the AFC North. Like, and then the Deshaun Watson suspension swirling, and like that price continues to get caved. The Ravens always are super tryhards in the preseason and win football games, and that convinces people even more to get Ravens. Like it was only going to go one way. All of those prices were going to go one way, and yet I didn't bet anything.
I still can't do it. And it's just like we talked about, we're like, hey, Cincinnati has holes, but the passing game is what wins games nowadays.
Sure.
And that's not where they have holes at. And that's the biggest problem I had, why I'm not like anti-Ravens. I have the Ravens and Bengals honestly identical, which is crazy because they're going to get there in super different ways. And, this is a team that let's go back. Well, we didn't do 2021 a good service, but you lost 3 running backs in between like the preseason and right away. Was it all 3 before the season even started? Your top 3 running backs still go out and rush for like what, 2,500 yards as a team. Like it didn't matter who it was. It was the scheme, and it was Lamar and the pieces they put in place between the offensive line, despite another big injury, losing starting all-pro left tackle. I mean, that's got to hurt the running game.
I
No,
don't think he
just
took a
plug
snap
in
this year,
whoever.
did he?
Go sign Le'Veon Bell for a few games. Go bring in whoever, and you're still just going to be this team that trucks for however many yards a game, being one of the best rushing offenses in the league. I don't know, and that's where I wonder where if you're right where they're at. It's like, are we just leaning into running and defense in 2022? And I'm still at a spot where this defense is talented enough, and a healthy Lamar still ends up going over this win total and is absolutely in contention to be going back and forth with Cincinnati for this division. It's a super, super weird roster construction that I hate, but I can't poke enough holes in an experienced coaching staff, a former MVP, a run scheme, and a defense to say, oh, this team's probably going to lose because, and this is another spot where it's like they don't have the first place schedule. They have some tough games on here. And obviously, since he's in their division, that's not an easy out with what we just talked about. But like that, I'm fine with this team being pretty similar to that. And yeah, like I said, it was 19 players on the IR at the end of the season that was, leading the league. And the defense as well. They lost both of their starting corners at certain points. Lamar missed the end of the year, the last 4 games, and they still could have made the playoffs heading into the last couple weeks there.
Crazy.
They still had a winning season within their grasp. It was a very, again, the results were, if you sit and think about this and you're years from now and you're thinking about the team in Baltimore that lost all those games, for some reason you're just like, that was like a 6-win team, right? No, man, they almost had a winning record. Same thing with Cincy. Like, remember that Cincy team that went to the Super Bowl? Like, man,
we got to correct the record,
games.
man. We got to correct the record. The Ravens were overrated by the market all through that winning stretch. They were overrated.
Like against the spread. Yeah, they weren't a bet on team. There was no reason to ever bet on this team.
Lucky ass win against Detroit. Lucky come from behind win against Indianapolis. The Indianapolis game, by the way, if you want to go back and rewatch it, that was the sort of game where you're like, Pay Lamar, what are you fucking thinking? But like, they had some very lucky wins until, like, I guess, okay, so before Lamar got hurt,
all of their wins were close. Like
they were all close.
I mean,
Drew, very, very, very close.
Drew, and but listen to what you're saying though. This is a team that's predicated on defense.
Running
the ball. Weird they were in this positions to kick game-winning field goals, and you're not making comebacks down 30. It's because you're a defensive team that runs the ball. So yeah, like they did have luck on their side in winning some of those close games. They weren't probably an 8-win team. I'm guessing their Pythag was a little lower than that. Probably not, because it's not like they got blown out a lot. It was a very hard team to reckon with as far as a power ranking for the season. And I mean, you're right. Like, beating someone on a 66-yard field goal isn't sustainable, but I'm probably still going to give them some benefit of the doubt because the whole damn team was injured. So what are you gonna say? Like, this team was lucky and they shouldn't have been that good. Like, who knows? Who knows how good they should have been?
Yeah, but a lot of people want to put those two together, which is that, like, they had all these injuries and they still were first in the
but
AFC.
Can't they? They still played close games with a ton of teams. Whereas a lot of teams, if you lose both your starting corners, your left tackle, and all your running backs, there's a lot of teams that are just shithouse. And they got shithoused by Cincy.
They have good leadership.
But I'm trying to think of, like, and then late in the season, I'm not going to count like the Cincy game where you didn't have Lamar, but even late in the year, a Pittsburgh team that needed to win to get into the playoffs took them to overtime with backups all over them. I mean, that was an absolute preseason squad they put out there. It's just, it was strange to try to mesh those two things for sure.
I think
there's no perfect way to do that.
You learned that Harbaugh still has his fastball. He still knows how to keep a team together. He, some of his decision making got them those hard fought wins, surely. And I think I think you learned enough about Lamar that you should have invested in him more than you did. Which brings us to paying him. I think, if you want to pick apart aspects of his game, that is fine. But there is no denying that he commands more gravity, more attention from the defense, and is the most dynamic athlete in the NFL as of this moment. And I think the fact that you can capitalize on, that you have that player and you got him effectively at a discount where you drafted him is, credit to your organization doing things an intelligent way. And I think you reward a player like that. And you build around him more so than they have. And I don't like what they're doing. And I think they should have, pulled the trigger and given him the extension a long time ago. And I don't understand any of the reporting or any of the discussion around this at all. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't think anyone really knows what's going on. And you brought it up that he's his own agent. And that's probably the major issue here. Because, the Lamar himself negotiating for himself, but also preparing to be a quarterback he's got two jobs and he's doing one really well and he's not doing the other at all. So it's like, he needs representation. And I think at the end of the season, successful or not successful, they're going to come to some agreement and keep him there for the long term. And if they don't, I mean, good God, we might have 2 years in a row where, a clear top 10 quarterback switches teams after Watson did last year. Lamar could go somewhere next year and it would, jumpstart a franchise from afterthought to contender immediately. But I don't think the Baltimore Ravens are willing to let Lamar walk out the door. He means too much to the city. He means too much in that locker room. But God damn it, are they handicapping him? And I think that there are people who tell on themselves that critique his passing as with a broad brush, right? Like, you can put together a low light reel from Pat Mahomes last year if you feel like it. There's plenty of absolute garbage he put on tape last year. If you want to, kind of make that case. Lamar Jackson, because of his athletic gifts, I think is an easier target. And so more people are doing that. And so there's just a louder cacophony of, this guy can't throw. Then I think that's completely unfair, because he showed, at least in my opinion, some highs in his ability to process, decision make, and execute from the pocket last year that showed growth. And his growth was maybe stunted because his athletic gifts were so unbelievably good that he could cheat his way to successful football plays, even without having to kind of go through and do the full progression that a quarterback has to do when he was a younger quarterback. And now he's kind of going through the growing pains and getting both elements up to starter level. And if and when that clicks, look the fuck out. But I don't know that it's happening when he's throwing to Rashad Bateman, Devin Duvernay, and James Proche. And that's what drives me absolutely crazy.
That's still where I'm stuck. Like, maybe it's like, all right, Bateman, we believe in him inside the organization. He's going to take a big step forward. He was a stud in college. We have a good quarterback, a good line. Like, he was injured part of the season. He had a groin injury. Like, we think he's going to be a bona fide wide receiver one in this league. All right. Then he's like, all right, Devin Duvernay. All right, he's a slot guy, middle of the league. Like, that'll work. But when you have a second-year project that you're hoping to be your wide receiver one, who's coming off an injured season, and you have just an okay slot guy, I guess you're saying we're punting because we have an all-world tight end? Like, just to not do anything at wide receiver 3 or at depth feels really weird if you're trying to, get the most out of Lamar. And it was something we really were nice about this team. We said, hey, this team was great. Roman was great about, fitting a round peg into a round hole and not doing the opposite, which a lot of teams do, and just like, hey, we're making Lamar Jackson a pocket passer, or worse, we're making a wide receiver. That was that was floated around before he was drafted. So I've always been happy with what the team's done with him and until now. And yeah, it just doesn't make sense. So I'm not going to sit here and ponder what I don't know or can't know about how they feel about him, but it doesn't feel good.
No, I don't.
I think that's what holds this team. If this team with like one more good wide receiver is like, this team's upside is stupid high.
Yeah, you know what? I don't mind.
They have all pieces all over.
I think the Ravens have fucked up here. I don't think Lamar has. I think the Ravens had the opportunity to give Lamar $1 more than Josh Allen when Josh Allen signed that contract, and then they would have been done with it. Now Lamar wants Deshaun Watson money.
Now it's festering.
And the Ravens have set up Lamar in a way that if he does not reach expectations this year, other teams who are desperate they will still give him a Lamar contract. They surely will. And Deshaun Watson contract. And so I think Lamar has probably made the correct gamble on himself, but the Ravens, I think, have screwed this up more so. And I guess what I mean by, like think about like a team like Tampa Bay, right? Let's say Tom Brady retires after this year. They're giving Lamar a Deshaun Watson contract in a heartbeat, aren't they? A team like the Panthers. Panthers is so desperate for a quarterback. You got plenty of space on that.
Yeah, that cap. Let's do a percentage thing. What percentage do we put? Baker was just hurt and his feelings were hurt and he didn't like Cleveland, and he has a resurgence where we go into the 2023 season and say like, Baker Mayfield is the unquestioned starter in Carolina because it worked out well enough last year. Feels like 15%.
I was going to go 20. 15 is fine.
15, yeah, that feels like the highest I'm going to go on that. So yeah, there's always teams in the market. Seattle's in the market. Seattle has a couple good wide receivers, guys.
Guess who else is in the market? Detroit's in the market. You got
Minnesota might be in the market.
Minnesota might be in the market. Washington Commanders are in the market. The New York Giants are going to be in the market. You know who would look great in a Brian Daboll system? Lamar fucking Jackson. Like, honestly, send him to New York.
The funniest part too is he had to like come out and address him liking a social media photo of him in a different jersey.
Well, who did?
Lamar. Remember?
Oh.
He had to explain
so he's thinking like,
he had to explain like those are my favorite teams when I was a kid, Okay, buddy. I know I don't read too much into that shit. It's not the NBA.
There are numerous very good landing spots for Lamar Jackson if he walks away at the end of this year, which means he's going to get what he wants at the end of the day anyway. And nobody's going to look at his performance. Nobody's going to look at his performance this year and judge it one way or the other because he's been set up to only not set up to fail, but just like there's only one side of the distribution in terms of how you perceive Lamar Jackson after this season. It is he did better than I thought he would, considering what he has to work with. Like there's no other side of that coin, I don't think. Right? Like Tua, there's another side of that coin where if he doesn't give you production with considering what they put around him, then you know what you got, right? That's not really the case here.
You know who wasn't terrible? Tyler Huntley.
Yeah, well, maybe if the Ravens want to go down that path.
That's the thing. If you want to be a defensive team that runs the ball.
Which brings us maybe to our next point.
Oh God, I just need a shower.
This brings us to our next point, which is the age and injury concerns for everyone who's good on this
Basically
roster.
All the players.
Basically everyone who's good. Everyone who's good is a red flag.
Well, except Lamar, and his red flag is he's not under a long-term contract.
Right.
So players are leaving this team through the attrition of injury, age, or just not being a member of the team due to contractual obligations being fulfilled and taken care of at that point. But like you have a young receiving core. Yes, good job. But
Wait. I'm going to do my hand quote. Receiving core.
receiving core. That is air quotes around that for sure.
Yeah, Bateman, Duvernay, and Proshi.
Patrick Queen. Patrick Queen's not that old, but he's also.
Oh, he also sucks.
He's not living up to his first round billing. Your two corners are not that young, and they both just got badly injured.
Congratulations, everybody! Everybody falling all over themselves that you stole Kyle Hamilton in the draft, and you stole Tyler Linderbaum. Both guys already huge question marks for performance and injury.
Yeah. When healthy, Linderbaum was a nice spot. They also got that. Didn't they pick up somebody that fell due to injury? The Michigan linebacker. I don't think Ojabu. I don't think he's like healthy yet. Is he?
No.
Is he the one that blew out an Achilles?
He's on the IR.
Yeah, that was one of those.
If he plays this year, will be a surprise.
Yeah, it's one of those.
He did that on his pro day. So March. I guess Cam Akers came back.
Yeah, that's what it was. I'm like, God, you'd think he would come back because it's been a while. Yeah. The offensive lineman they drafted from Minnesota, he's enormous. Like, I don't know, a bit of a raw project there, but if you can get his footwork,
Daniel Falele,
he's 380 if he's announced.
Dude, you're down the depth chart too. Like,
no, I'm saying like, well, that's what I'm saying. Like,
let's put a finer point on this.
You got a nice defensive piece because he fell to you. He just can't play this year, most likely, or you know, maybe in the playoffs. You got a raw tackle who's enormous, but he's raw. You got a bunch of older pieces, and then like your two top picks were really actually I was high on them when they picked them, but we're already looking at some uncertainty on those. So a lot of uncertainty ishy.
Okay.
Linderbaum will be good if he's healthy, I think.
Okay, that's fine. Your best defender last year, because of all the injuries, was Tyus Bowser. He's on the IR right now. Your other good name defenders, Calais Campbell is 35. Justin Houston is 32. The general kind of who's who of amazing offensive linemen you had, Ronnie Stanley, if healthy, is a top 5 tackle in the NFL. No clue what state of fitness he is in right now. He missed the entire season last year.
All of it. Game 1 he was injured.
Been a long time since we saw Marshall Yanda. He's retired now, and his absence changed sort of overall the strength of that offensive line significantly. So your starting offensive line is a question mark in Stanley, Ben Powers, Tyler Linderbaum, who we said is a rookie at center, Kevin Zeitler, and Morgan Moses. Kevin Zeitler was a cast-off.
Liz Frank injury already.
Linderbaum has a Liz
playing
Frank,
through a Liz Frank. Yeah.
Zeitler,
apparently he played through that for his whole senior year.
Zeitler couldn't catch on it with the Giants. Morgan Moses couldn't catch on with the Jets. Like, this is a bad offensive line. It's bad. And they could be coached up, and it may not matter. But where are we at now? Bad wide receiver core, bad offensive line, all universe tight end, and a bunch of running backs that aren't very healthy.
That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They could put you at tailback with me at fullback, and you would. Right. I could get you to 1,200 yards in this system, Drew. We just need to learn the plays. Like they plugged in garbage. The run scheme is good enough. I don't think the running backs matter. I'm way more worried about the offensive line. I feel like it comes together to be at least okay, just because that's the identity and that's where they've always been able to coach that up. The defense is fragile, but it's still, you have some high-end pieces that they haven't aged out quite yet. So this is, I think, out of the two teams, and I did say this, I said I have Cincinnati and Baltimore very close in both my power ratings and where I project them to finish the season. I have Baltimore slightly lower in the power ratings, but I have their schedule easier, so I have them winning, games more easily. And okay. I think they are more fragile, though. You said, we have a
if this we offense, have a
yeah, we have a problem here. Is like if this wide receiver core isn't a problem, because honestly, like, it's not worse than last year. Hollywood Brown's fine, but he's nothing special. How many plays did he waste by dropping balls? Like, he dropped more balls than anybody. Honestly, I don't think this is like some massive downgrade. You still have your best receiver on the field. You have all your running backs back. This offense is better than it was last year.
If this offense is above,
healthy, but
okay,
they're still fragile all over the field. And again, if they have, it's one of those things where they had all this crazy luck in coin flip games and weird situations where they won 8 games as a team who lost like 270 combined adjusted games to injury. If they lose half that, I don't think they get to 8 wins. Like, that wasn't sustainable. That was a weird year, like you said. It's not those two things didn't jive. Like, they weren't actually some 8-win team. They were a team that kept games close and got lucky a few times. So,
Andy,
if they sustain half the injuries they did last year, this team might win 6 or 7.
In the time before Lamar Jackson went down last year, most of the injuries were on the defensive side of the ball. Would you agree? Outside of Ronnie Stanley.
Staley and the 3 running backs.
Okay.
I mean, really, the 2 biggest injuries on the defense were just the corners.
That's big, though.
I mean, your 2 starting corners is super important. People do like to throw the ball, and
cluster injury at cornerback is bad. But through
and your first round draft pick,
up and through Lamar going down, this was the 18th ranked offense in the NFL out of 32. If this offense this year stays healthy and exceeds league average, it will be entirely because Lamar Jackson is a superhero and no other reason. Because
I think
the rest of this roster,
his expectations,
the rest of this offensive roster is garbage.
We need to stop saying that. It's
not
very good.
Okay, well, see how good he is when he's got triple coverage in every freaking game.
I mean, it's not like people were scared of Duvernay last year. And
whatever.
Even Hollywood, it's not like Hollywood was drawing. I mean, you're going to draw safety help if you're.
He'll roast the Jets week 1, and you can do a victory lap, and then we'll see how it goes from there. Fundamentally, this offense, their ceiling to me is like in that 18 to 16 range, and the expectation is lower than that. And the defense
over the halfway mark is going to be a win for this offense.
And the defense is good, but old and fragile as fuck. Which means that I do not understand why this is a team that is expected to compete with the likes of the Chiefs and the Bills and the Chargers and the Bengals. Like, this is the market has gone way, way, way too far in the direction of this team being elite, and it is just not there on paper. And I am one of the biggest Lamar Jackson fans in the gambling space. I think I would guess. I'm in that at least in the top 5 percentile. And it would make me extremely happy to see him succeed this year and elevate this team and take them on a run. But the odds are against him.
I will say, if there's a spot they're not fragile and thin at, it is probably the defensive secondary. Not only because they have some decent backups, they drafted a high-end safety, but like some guys got some extra, guys got extra reps last year too in a system that has always produced high-end defensive secondary pieces. So they have decent backups there. But yeah, like your defensive line's a little old. That's not great.
Your market rating right now is the 8th best team in the NFL. Your market offensive rating is the 9th best team in the NFL. Your defensive rating right now is top 5. That can only go down because of injury. That can't go up. This is a team that is overrated by market, and the correction will come. I hope they make the playoffs. I will cheer for Lamar out of just fandom every opportunity we get, but I'm not getting tricked into betting on these guys any which way, especially at these currently grossly inflated prices. Just gross. These prices are gross.
What if Odell Beckham signs?
Seems like a good fit, but he's coming off of second ACL.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, we're talking middle of the season kind of stuff.
Yeah. Let's see the schedule. Let's look and see if
T.Y.
there's a
Hilton
does not move the needle for me. Sorry.
Doesn't move it enough.
No.
Emmanuel Sanders, is he healthy?
A lot of blue on this schedule, Andy. A lot of games with their favorites. A lot.
And that's the thing too. Like, I'm not high. I like putting them as a top 10 offense is silly. I don't have them there. I have them, in the teens on the defense. I'm fine with that rating, but you're right. It's not going to tick up. Best case is it stays static, but I don't have that offense that high. That said, you're playing a bunch of teams. You get the Jets. You play Miami without having to go to Miami. I'm not super excited about the New England experiment right now with their offense. Buffalo's a loss. Cincinnati's probably a loss.
You match up super poorly.
That secondary. That secondary just, and again, there were some injuries there, but Humphrey played half of the season, if not a little more.
Humphrey, I think 10
or 12 games.
Humphrey's gonna have to. He's got to do some image repair after what Jamar Chase did to him.
Yeah. The Giants can win that one. Cleveland, you get Cleveland early at least, but then Tampa, New Orleans into the bye, away.
Yeah, tough.
Tough into the bye. Carolina, who knows? Honestly, their strength is their wide receiving core. If you keep your cornerbacks healthy, I'd like to see Baker come up and do anything against that team. That's a good matchup for them. Jacksonville is still jury's out. We like them, but there's a high volatility team. Denver, you don't have to go to altitude. And then away. 2 division games in a row, away. And one is after Watson's had 3 or 4 games to get his feet under him with the offense. That's not great. And then probably win, and then hope. I mean, if you're being the fan, the true, I'm a big Ravens fan. I want to win this division. You're hoping that game is for the division, but realistically, you're hoping Cincy's resting players again. That's the thing. Go look at all of Cincy's stuff. Like Cincy didn't play their starters in the last year.
They didn't have to. Yeah.
No,
they still covered.
They still covered. You kind of hope that. I know. I forgot to mention that we said they covered their last 8 games. Like one of those games was like a Ryan Finley game, or is that their backup?
Cincinnati's backup QB.
I think
I don't remember.
He got traded.
I don't remember who. They only have one. They only have one quarterback on the roster.
The Vikings did that too. They got rid of everyone but Kirk and I think Mullins is on the roster still.
They got Jake Browning on the practice squad, so presumably Jake Browning is elevated as something.
All right, January 9th.
So 4-13.
Brandon Allen. Somebody in the chat probably already said it. Brandon Allen started that game that they
covered. They lost.
They covered, damn near won.
A lot of advantage travel here, so you have that going for you. But boy, like these coin flips are crazy. I agree with your general rundown of wins losses for the most part. I think you're going to really struggle against the elites of.
What's the furthest they fly? New Orleans?
Yes. Looks like it.
I mean, you got
Jacksonville's kind of. No, it's New Orleans. It's got to be New Orleans. Yeah.
New Orleans, yeah.
No travel. You're not traveling, right?
2 of your away games are in the Meadowlands, which is right up the. I almost said Turnpike. That's not the right highway. I did learn
95
where was.
Right up the 95.
Oh, by the way,
the Delaware and the New Jersey Turnpike gets you to the Meadowlands.
I was reading some. I was trying to click into an article to read some wide receiver thoughts, and I hit the paywall. I always get mad when I hit the paywall anyway, but I got extra mad because it's the Baltimore Sun. I had flashbacks to what they did in season 5 of The Wire, but it just wasn't my favorite season. And those shit heels down there made me mad at the media. But yeah, those are pretty close. Tampa, New Orleans is rough, but like Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Cincinnati, those aren't big flights. You don't have a lot of bad travel spots at all. And then you have the one big ass rest disadvantage against, I'm assuming Jacksonville's coming off their bye there.
Yeah, that's got to be it. Not that bad.
Someone's bringing up the Serena match. Yeah. Noops has been to the U.S. Open a couple times. If you guys don't know Noops, he's our tennis friend for sure.
I mean, they rigged the draw for Serena.
He said it's the noise coming from Ash was just nuts the other night. He's like, you can hear it anywhere you were in the area. It was wild. So
yeah,
she is up 5-2.
Kontaveit was an absolutely ideal opponent for her in round 2.
And Rodina almost got another. Rodina just lost. She almost got another one. But
Samsonova, I need Samsonova to close this out in 2 bigly, please. And also, it looked like Karen Khachanov was going to be our first straight set winner on the men's side today, but he choked, and Montero took the third. And so we still have yet to have any man win in straight sets today. Everybody wants to go play in the heat. All right.
I mean, thoughts.
Let's go.
Let's look at the there's a lot of paths where this team wins just as many games as Cincinnati.
Yeah,
because it's not that bad of a schedule.
Sure.
Pittsburgh has a similar easy schedule for travel with a worse team, but
I also think it could go poorly though.
Yeah, fragile team.
Super Bowl 20-1. AFC plus 950. No. I think the AFC North price of plus 145 is crazy to me. My number is closer to 250. Most of my equity is with the Bengals. Some of it is with the Browns. To make the playoffs, yes is minus 156. No is plus 128. No is really enticing. Regular season win total 10.5. Under 9.5. Alt under for the Ravens is really a tough, like that's the one that I've been staring at for a while now. Like these numbers are inflated. There's a bet to be made. There's EV betting against the market on this. And I think the alt under is the way to do it. I don't like to do it because I don't want to be like cheering against Lamar this year, but it's there in my opinion. What do you make of that?
Yeah. I'm pretty Ravens agnostic as far as betting.
But that's just it. We knew that those numbers were going to move in the Ravens' direction, and we didn't bet it, which is basically the same as making a bet against.
Yeah, no, I made a bet that the number would still be within reach when they traded for a good wide receiver. And I don't know, in my head, I said they can't not. The Vikings made more of a move to fill in for Olabisi Johnson than the Ravens did to try to shore up this. So I don't know. I don't get it. Yeah, I'm not betting any of these. I'm fine with yours. I can't push back enough to talk you out of those. Those are
okay.
They're fragile enough where I'd go so far as 8.5 under.
I agree with that. Betting plan of attack.
Yeah, beef, eat a pork chop.
You gotta find ways to sell high on this team. And maybe after they nuke the Jets, but I haven't bet that game. I don't know that 7 is weighable. I don't think that the Ravens are teasable either. What are you going to do about Jets Ravens? Anything?
I love the Ravens as a teaser team.
Dude, Serena is going to break to win, huh? Wow.
Yeah, the old sexy. That's what
Wow.
Kelly calls it. It doesn't really matter when it's to win.
It's not a sexy to win, no.
It's not a sexy.
It's better than trying to serve it out. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Kontaveit couldn't handle the heat of the court, of the crowd, and the
get out
over.
of the
Serena Williams on to round 3. Amazing.
She played really well in the first round too. She trucked.
Kontaveit
did.
Yeah. I thought.
Anyway, all right. So betting plan of attack. Yeah.
Serena can beat Tom Leonovich.
Not current Tom Leonovich. I'll take that bet.
She doesn't scare me.
Another match point for
Samson. I mean, come on, Sam. Like
Ludmilla
is just teasing me here. Teasing me. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is number 4. All right.
So,
betting plan of attack.
Plan of attack. Yes.
Fade the market.
A team who plays defense and runs the ball against a worse team is my favorite type of favorite to bet down especially even on the road, even a road
So
favorites
are you going to tease them week 1 then?
maybe. I'm
Good
not going to
suggest.
avoid many teasers this year.
You like a teaser like that says Lamar Jackson has to beat Joe Flacco?
Joe Flacco revenge game. I really do think Flacco plays that game. It doesn't sound
too.
like Zach Wilson.
I don't
going to be
think so
close
either.
to ready.
And honestly, like if they tried out a bum wheel Zach Wilson, that's even better for your teaser.
Yeah, you can't tease 9.5. I suppose you could, but no. I mean, it's a nice teaser leg. I think I'm probably going to put it in there with one. And like I said, I will not be avoiding teasers this year. I'll be playing lots and lots of them.
Match point number 5. Let's fucking go, Ludmilla. Jesus Christ.
What'd you lay, 3.5 or the 2-0?
Both.
All right. Well, that is it. Again, thanks to our sponsor, Circa.
Ooh.
The Circa contests. I'll be out there again next weekend, maybe signing up for more.
Cool.
Might be doing a Survivor with a group of friends, which is a fun way to do it.
Yes.
Get into any of those. No overlay, or excuse me, no rake, lots of overlay. They just crossed the halfway point for getting rid of the overlay on, I think, the Survivor. So there's tons of overlay left. We are 8 days away from football, 10 days away from our first Sunday where it actually closes. We're going to do our quick, rapid fire recap episode next. We're going to record it this week because there's a goddamn holiday, guys. We're going to release it next week. And then also we're going to start with I didn't really talk to you about this at all, Drew, but we'll start with our previewing a week on Wednesdays.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of you guys are in the Discord. Most of you guys follow us on Twitter. If you have any suggestions for that, we don't really ever talk about the format. We just came to the assumption, let's do what we've always done. We've made small changes over the years where we've said like, hey, there's a game that we both don't want to talk about. Should we just do it real quick and 30-second handicap on these? But yeah, if there's anything you think's missing from those or anything you'd like us to touch more on that you like, just Twitter us, leave it in the YouTube comments, hit us in the Discord, let us know what's going on.
I like it.
Because I'm more than happy to do what
Chop it up.
Chop it up. So I will see you. Enjoy your holiday weekend, guys.